unlimited incentive that comes with individuals' effort. And even communism is even much worse.
It's great to be with
but I don't want to go there. What I want to say is, in most cases, we've had these discussions. We've said we have got best performing economies in the world. We've wanted to compare ourselves with Singapore, for example. Virtually everybody talks about Singapore. Did you know that Singapore is number one, is one of the countries that has really excelled as a result of exercising capitalism? Okay? Somebody said there's nothing like capitalism, socialism. Yes, there's none. There's nothing like that. But did you also know you can have a combination of both? Okay? Kenya, you want to define Kenya as a capitalist economy, but I also want to tell you there's socialism in Kenya. For example, who produces, who supplies, who controls the price, say, of gas in Kenya? Who supplies energy in Kenya? Okay? Do you have economies that do the same, for example? Look at Canada, how does it do? Look at the US, how does it do? But I don't want to go there. What I want to say is I just want to say we really need to have some time where we can really understand these them, and we also tell ourselves what we want. But we need to understand that the main problems of the economy failure in Kenya is not necessarily the kind of economic system that we have inclined to. What has caused the problem in Kenya is corruption. Corruption, number one. When we say, for example, we want to have the conflict of interest bill, we want to separate the public officers from participating, say, in procurements, in supply of goods and services, in participating in tenders. We have politicians will go and manipulate that. They mutilate the very constitution provisions that we have put in place so that they change that to have their interests, to have their wives. Supply in disguise. Supply, and ultimately control the payments and inflate the prices and everything. So primarily, we want to identify corruption as a major problem. In Kenya, what we suffer therefore is a tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is where individuals and especially politicians take all the resources at the expense of the Kenyans, at the expense of the majority. Okay, they exploit all the profits, but ultimately the consequences that come from exploitation, the loss is shared among all the mass who never benefited from whatever incentives or whatever benefits that were accrued by the individuals. The other thing I want to talk about is tribalism. We need to talk about tribalism. And we look at it and we see how has tribalism helped drive corruption in our country. I say so because the time you call out some individuals, for being involved in corruption, the very first line of defense for them is they are being targeted because of being associated with certain communities. And that's what they come and tell you, you know what? Our people are being targeted. Okay? When you call out Linturi, for example, for distribution of adulterated fertilizer to the farmers, the very first thing he says, he makes a first stop, a rally address to masses in Meru town, and he says, you know what? We are being targeted. None of the Meru was involved in adulteration of fertilizer. None of the Merus was involved in supply of the fertilizers. None of the Meru benefited for whatever was accrued after all the corruption was involved in the Ministry of Agriculture. But he must hide behind the community, and that's why we need to identify the role of tribalism and how it enables corruption to thrive in our country. The last thing I want to talk about is these things I'm mentioning in abstract. I want us to identify one subject after another and discuss in detail. And that's how we can only be able to educate ourselves best. The last thing is about the constitution making. I just want to say constitution making is absolutely political, is a high tension exercise. It is highly contentious. Before we got ourselves the constitution we have today, before we call it copy and paste, I don't know from where, we need to identify, we need to remind ourselves that we've had so many drafts. We had the Bombers draft, we had the Wacko draft, I think we had another draft that was done by Paul Shalgai. All this. By the time we went to the referendum in 2010, we had filtered so many documents. Okay? And I also believe that what we suffer today as a result of the constitution we got, it is not necessarily the result of the constitution draft that we got. It is mutilation by the politicians. One thing that guided us to go to for the change in the constitution, it was separation of power. The executive to be separated from the legislature and also from the judiciary, because we knew that for sure for a long time the presidency in this nation had taken control over all these arms of government. Did we clearly stipulate that there will be separation of power between these three arms of the government? The answer is yes. Have we had full implementation of the same in the spirit and the letter that we stipulated? The answer is no. Why? Because there's been progressive mutilation by the government. There's progressive mutilation of the constitution by the very people we sent to power. So let's identify what the problems is. Let's talk about them. Corruption, tribalism, is the main monster that has militated virtually everything. Even today, we come up with a very good constitution. If we don't make it impervious from mutilation, it will still be mutilated. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh yeah, nothing KE. Nothing KE, Sasa.
Hi, Fabish. Hi, Wanjiro. Hi, everybody. As usual, I start by saluting everyone. The comrades we've lost in the battle, the injured, and those who are missing. Hi, Wanjiro. Yeah, I think it's about time we boycotted this particular company. For a simple reason that yes, data has been shared. And the other angle that data is being shared, look at the contract that Bill Gates was given when the regime came to power. So Safaricom is a company that people should dump as quickly. As you can see, the first name, there's alternative in the market, and really people can find a different product to use. First of all, it's overrated, it's expensive, you don't get value for money. And yeah, we need to focus on the revolution. Change is imminent, whether they like it or not. The happenings in the country are devastating. People turning up dead. We need to spam every human rights body, every country, even the small ones, just to complain about this extra judicial killings, unexplained murder, abduction. For the different embassy to release a joint statement, it simply says there's something that they know. They were just trying to dust off their hands from being blamed. So of course, we know they're not our friends. They are his enabler. So we need to wake up to wake up and take this responsibility and make sure that we rattle them to the very end. Every life matters. Then the other thing is this abuse of the constitution. Of course, it's not the best of constitution, because a time has come for Africa to write their own constitution. We inherited something that is not in our favor in totality. Maybe the aspects of it that are good are very little. And I think I had a speaker who was talking about what they like about the constitution. It's not the worst in its entirety, but it's time we write. It's actually a tool of colonization. We continue to read, we need to, but a time has come, we don't need such a huge constitution. The time has come for us to review and write, to write the African story. So yeah, we need to look at, okay, personally, when I want to understand something, I look at the genesis of it, and then I look at the untold story, and then basically try and connect the dots. You cross the tails and dot the I, and eventually you have an idea what exactly is going on. So yes, the constitution is definitely not perfect, but as imperfect as it may be, why is it open for abuse? We know the DP is supposed to, of course, I do not support Rigathi Gachagua. However, his ouster was unconstitutional. Why were dignitaries, in fact, we should not call them that, where this clown, where did they attend? Why do they want to respect the rule of law in their country, but be partakers of abuse of a constitution in a different dispensation? So I tend to think we're basically on a wrecking train, and it's headed for collision. Unfortunately, the citizens have been collateral damage for the longest. We need to continue putting the pressure by making sure that no issue that is being devoured is left behind, whether it's the airports, the agriculture and livestock bills, healthcare. We've seen people are dying, like literally dying, because of this shift shaft scam. I was deeply, deeply disturbed when I saw a video where the CS of, is it the PS of health, he said, if you want to be a little more comfortable with insurance, then go private. And so why are they deducting money? People are getting those services prior without having to pay an arm and a leg. So Kenyans are on their own, and we need to raise our voice for the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing. We go to Western, Silahau.
Hi, Fabich, and your team listenership over there. Fabich, before I delve into this ideological conversation, first, I've battled to understand why some of us exaggerate the supposed commitment to human rights and the rule of law by the US government. And therefore, we expect the US ambassador in Nairobi, to side with people who are fighting against injustice when there's no evidence that the American state stands for justice, democracy, and the rule of law. See what's happening in the Gaza. We're supporting that violence and genocide and weaponry, and they're making those pronouncements publicly. So like they're hiding. Whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or Barack. Have you heard any one of them? condemning what's happening in the Gaza? Have you? So why do you expect the US ambassador in Kenya to side with the people who are fighting against a regime that is perpetrating things that are not any different from the things that are happening to the Palestinians? I think we're betraying lack of understanding of global politics. And I don't know where this notion comes from that America is the paragon of good governance and democracy and rule of law and those kind of things. I think we should perish that thought. There's ample evidence. They have destabilized countries all over the world. They have caused mayhem all over the world. Some of those things border on genocide. So why do we bother whether the US ambassador in Nairobi shares a podium with William Ruto or whoever it is? Why do we bother? Is there to safeguard the interests of the American state, and is not apologetic about that. Secondly, I wish to say, Fabrice, vis-a-vis the Constitution. I always say, and I repeat it here, you may have a constitution that reads so well, like it's so lofty, but it's in whether people can actually realize those things the Constitution promises them. That is evidence that the Constitution works. But in the context of Kenya, there's a lacuna between those very lofty provisions in the law and people's lived realities. And therefore, this incessant invocation of the Constitution, when in actual sense, very few people, can actually speak anything and say, like, this, my life has turned around as a result of this Constitution. Look, evidence that the Constitution is not working is where people discuss it all the time. That's evidence. If you go to a society where people are ever discussing the Constitution and whatever is there, and people off-head quote provisions in the law, that's evidence that it's not working. It's not working. Because in another jurisdiction, you would just see water. There's water in a tap. You don't have to know whether there's a provision in the law that says you're entitled to water. No, you'll see water. You'll see that there's trash and rubbish has been cleaned along the streets. You don't have to look at the Constitution and see. Your child will go to school, and you can tell when you listen to your child that the education is of quality. You don't have to look at the Constitution. You go and protest. The police will protect you. Are the ones who are going to guide you as you protest. They're not to be the ones to shoot at you. That is evident the Constitution is working. Cabinet ministers, when they fall afoul of the Constitution, they fall on their sword and resign. Take moral and political responsibility. The Constitution is working. So this notion where we keep on invoking the Constitution, oh, it's what borrowed from South Africa, from the US, that's ample evidence that it's actually not working. And like democracy, constitution, and rule of law, if these things cannot turn around people's material conditions, they are just that, not worth the papers on which they're written. The essence, the value, the significance of all these things, democracy, rule of law, constitution, is about people's lives and ordinary people for that matter. So in our context, yes, there is a 2010 constitution, but the mindset is not different from the one that was there before that constitution was promulgated, particularly amongst the political elite. It has not changed. They see the constitution as a distraction. We can change it. It doesn't apply to us. It only applies to mere mortals. That is the mentality, and we can see it. So I think we have to be realistic as opposed to being caught up in a flight of fancy. You're not dealing with your world as it is. Oh my, this thing. Imagine.
Fabish, as Dr. Weston answers that call and comes back, I wanted to say thank you to him for simplifying what I've been trying to make sense. And he is a better communicator to the people, not necessarily intelligent, but figuring out how to say something so that people can understand and making it relatable to our day-to-day lives. And I appreciate that very much. Mnanisikia? Wanjiro,
Yeah,
Fabrice.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can hear you.
So, and that's what oh yeah, G Des K, because from the way you were speaking, it seems like you were a participant in the writing of the Constitution. Before I make my statement, I'm going to ask one question. Was there any foreign involvement in the writing of this Constitution? Was there any foreign involvement outside of Kenya? And what was it?
I'll say yes, because we had, we imported experts in the draft of the Constitution. But what I wanted to say is we had more involvement of our own selves, and we had a lot of disagreement. And that's why I took you through the process of the draft, of how the draft was made. Remember very well, the Wako draft that was the Bomas draft was taken to Naivasha. Okay, they deliberated even more. They say that they manipulated and mutilated and came up with a Wako draft. What was subjected to the popular vote in 2005, you remember, was the Wako draft. It was campaign against. Okay, it did not meet the threshold. Okay, you remember how the NAC government, collapse thereafter after the 2005 vote. Okay, and so by the time we got ourselves 2010, it was the best we could at that time, having had a lot of consultation. But yes, your question is yes, there was involvement of the foreigners in terms of importation of experts, but I think over time we dissolved the involvement by way of consultation among ourselves.
So the other question, and then I'll make my statement, is was the United Kingdom involved?
I will not say that with authority. I was quite young then, so I need to revisit.
So because Ekuru, our court, admits that the United Kingdom was involved. So just because I know you're being careful about what you say. And this is the problem. And the other problem is that the people who are writing the Constitution are the elites, the people who have gone through the miseducation system, the people who have gone through the de-education system, the people who believe that we are inferior. And sometimes it's not even, they're not aware. It is a subconscious belief that the Western way is better. So when you sit down to write the Kenyan Constitution, you're not writing a Kenyan Constitution, you're writing a Western educated, miseducated, de-educated Constitution. And that's the problem. Because even at one point when I had a Kuru Aukot on Kumbukeni, and we had the Aisha, and I'm forgetting her name now just because I'm trying to keep my train of thought, Aishan lawyer, Ezili Danto. We had Ezili Danto there speaking to him about Haiti and the problem with the police going to Haiti. He admitted that he was just learning about this history. So it's about you all not having an African grounding. And moving forward, the reason I'm saying this, it is important for us to understand this flaw in those we choose to build our constitution, because it's a huge flaw. They seem black, yes, they're black, they're eating ugali and skuma, but they think like white men, and therefore they write a white constitution. So we need people who are grounded in Afrocentrism to write our next constitution. People who see the importance of manufacturing in Africa. People who are not looking to the white man for solutions, but are seeing them from our perspective. That is the problem. And also the involvement. They're like, why are you asking a South African to come and sit with you while you're building your constitution when South Africa is falling apart? When South Africa has been taken over by white people? Why are you asking, was it a Namibian or Ugandan? Seriously, Uganda. That has Museveni to come and help you write a constitution. Sometimes, like, we have to use our brains, and when we notice people are not using their brains, it's not to insult them. We have to call them out, especially when they come and give us these big titles and tell us they're this and that, and they wrote the constitution. I'm done with it. Handing it back to Western. Nimechoka mimi.
Thank you so much, Kumbukeni. Correct. There's a lot of elitism when it comes to some of these discussions. And you know, that's a form of tyranny. If you don't know, it's an ideological tyranny where you defer to the so-called experts. But experts have their own self-interest. Can you imagine a document as consequential as a constitution? You have got a committee of experts. No, really? They're the ones who are going to distill what will be in the best interest of everybody. They are right in. You're embedding in that document elitism. And then you pass it over the political elite. They're meeting somewhere in Naivasha. Now they have to see, of course, they're going to prioritize their self-interest. And that's exactly what they did. So when the document eventually is presented to Kenyans, well, what does it have? We have got this top-heavy government system. Who is it meant to serve? The political elite and their cronies and their allies, ordinary people. So people are crying, oh, we have got county governments, but you know what? They're just as corrupt as hell. Yeah, that's what they created. And they tell you, okay, we came up with these county governments to save you from yourselves so that you don't dissolve in unmitigated ethnic violence. How? How is that inclusive politics? When the elite have just moved from Nairobi to the rural areas and continue with their looting and plunder of state resources. How is a county government working for ordinary people when almost all the revenue that comes from the central government, the national government, ends up in paying salaries? And people even who are hired, they are hired through very dubious means. It's not even competitive. So those are the things we have. And therefore, it's not just enough to celebrate the charter without looking actually the actual benefits of this charter. Of course, things are not as they were back in time under the previous constitution, but it was not the constitution that was the problem. The problem, as it was the political elite, and we still have got those kind of people around. Fabish, as I finish, I wish to say something about ideology. These socialist policies, capitalist policies. In Kenya, we are unashamedly a capitalist society. And that is part of the problem, if not their problem with that country. Capitalism. Even the countries we think are capitalist do not practice capitalism the way we do in Kenya. They do marry capitalism with aspects of socialism. Because socialism, simply defined, is equal distribution of misery. Capitalism, an equal distribution of profits. So you make your pick. There are two extremes. So what do you find? The most capable states are states that marry both. If you go to the Scandinavian countries, which are considered to be, where people are happiest, standard of living is high up there, they marry capitalist traits and socialist traits. And what are socialist traits? Socialist traits are whereby a state centers the welfare, people's well-being, that it will be incumbent upon the state to provide, say, universal education to all and sundry, to provide universal healthcare to all and sundry. So we will tax you. That's a capitalist way of doing things. And we'll tax those who want more, tax them more. And they will provide quality education for all, including those who could have afforded and those who don't. Quality for all. Healthcare will tax you. That's a capitalist way of doing things. And tax more those who earn more. And then we roll out quality healthcare. So when you are sick, it doesn't matter your station in life. You can be admitted in the best hospital in which your prime minister or your president will be admitted in. That's what it means. So you marry both. China, this country here that is rising very fast. Under Chairman Mao, it was, communism through and through. But then it was a disaster because Chairman Mao had something called villagization, taking people into rural areas and controlling agriculture. It was a disaster. Millions of people starved to death. It took another leader called Deng Xiaoping. Is considered to be the father of modern China. What did he do? He decided to open up the Chinese economy to the rest of the world, that you can do business with the rest of the world. we can embrace certain aspects of capitalism. Americans and the Europeans can set up their companies here, there's labor, and we can also manufacture things and sell to them. That is it. But when it comes to their politics is closed. The Chinese Communist Party, the ideology is socialism. That's what it is. It controls the state, such that in China, the state, for instance, has banned private tuition. You can't just hire a teacher for your child. Say no. Kids must play. Every other child must play. We don't want some kids, because their parents can afford, have got private tuition in their homes. What is that? It's building an egalitarian state. The likes of Jack Ma, they're very powerful business people, but in China, the state, they operate under the state. They are no bigger than the state. Why? Because they appreciate that if you let private business, private entities, industrialists, to have a larger than life influence in the economy, that will create poverty. They're going to make a lot of profit, the way people are making profit in Kenya, and everybody else is going to sink into poverty. We have to control that. Jack Ma, we celebrate you. You're doing good business, but please, we will put you under a leash, because capitalism unchecked is going to hurt people, and especially poor people. So they build houses for those who can't afford, and when they meet, they come up with statistics. How many people have they rescued from abject poverty? They have got those statistics. So that's China. It's a mixture. There are elements of capitalism and there are elements of socialism. The same way Cambodia, if you go to Cambodia, that's what they are doing. The same way if you go to these countries called East Asian countries, they developed because there are these socialist policies, egalitarianism. We want to dignify everybody else. And those who want to get into business and genuinely take risk, the state will provide the requisite environment and you're going to make money. That's what they do. Here in Nairobi, what we do, we say, business people have to do their thing. The state has no control over business. No, you have. Because if you don't, that's why we have this dubious distinction of being one of the most unequal societies in the world. The same thing with South Africa, the same thing with Brazil. Because the so-called free market economy, if left unchecked, it hurts poor people. The so-called globalization, if left unchecked, it hurts poor countries in Africa and in the global south, because they don't have the requisite skills, technical know-how, capital to compete optimally with those from the global north. So I think those are the challenges we have as far as the political elite are concerned. They play by the rules that they don't appreciate, and they leave their citizenry to the caprices and whims of international capital. And therefore, that's why we have got these problems wherever, haggling and disputing over elections. And at the core of that, it's the economy, it's the political economy. So we need a developmental state. A developmental state is where there is state intervention in the question of development. But when you see Adani comes, I don't know, some other company is going to run SGR, another company is going to run, I don't know, Nairobi Express, those kind of things. Developmental states, that state is capable of doing those things. And the profits, whatever it is that accrues out of that, it's not even profit, that money goes to social welfare. But in our case, there are private entities that come to run things and then they run away with the profits. And the people of Kenya, whose money has been used to pump and build those infrastructural projects, they're left with nothing. But the political elite and their allies, they could be local or external from China, from Europe, wherever they are, they mint a lot of money. Now, that kind of system, Fabish, it's not sustainable. But you can't say capitalism is better or socialism is better. It's not. Even Nyerere tried it. African socialism across the border. Why it didn't go far, Mwalimu himself has confessed, it's because he underestimated individual selfishness, human greed. That when you roll out socialist policies, some people don't pull their socks, they don't carry the weight. And then they are going to profit from the rest, those who carry their weight and work. So he said, but this thing is not sustainable. Everybody must carry their weight. So African socialism in Tanzania, it had just to, Mwalimu, of course, he disputes, but it wasn't sustainable and it had to come to an end. USSR, under Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of USSR, he reached a point and realized, communism was not working. The country was relapsing into poverty. There was no innovation. Technologically, the country was sliding back. And the West, especially the US, was moving ahead. What did he do? He took the hard decision and said, look, I'm going to open USSR. This Union of Soviet Socialist Republics will come to an end. These constituted countries will break up and become individual states, and we'll go forward. So part of modernization of what is currently called the Russian Federation. So it's not an either or. You have to, it depends on your leader. In Botswana, they have got a mixture of capitalism and socialism. And that's why their diamonds have managed, they have exploited their diamonds and managed to rescue their people out of poverty. By the 1960s, when diamonds were discovered in Botswana, it was a dirt poor country. People are very poor. But the leadership, this party that lost elections the other day, it has had very progressive people who centered Botswana, the people of that country, that from the proceeds of diamonds, we are going to better uplift the living standards of our people. We're going to give them quality education, we'll give them infrastructure, we'll give them quality healthcare, and all those things. Good money. And that's why Botswana GDP per capita is high, 7,000 and something US dollars per person. Sub-Saharan Africa on average is around what? 4,000. In Kenya, 1,000 something US dollar. We are way, way back. It's about policies and the decision that the political elite take. So if you play by international rules, to the extent that the Washington consensus dictates to your country what is in the best interest of a country, well, you're not going to dent poverty. You're not going to dent inequalities. But if you deal with these people, well, in actual sense, you are acutely aware of the unique circumstances, the unique challenges economically of your people. Well, you can play by international rules, World Trade Organization and stuff like that, and at the same time uplift the living standards of your people. But what we've got people who are really much, they have swallowed hook, line, and sinker as far as capitalism is concerned. And that's what's hurting countries like Kenya. That's hurting countries like Nigeria and many other countries. And then you hear this notion of resource scarce countries. You've got resources, natural resources, you're endowed, but your people are dirt poor. You have got natural resources, but poverty is increasing in your country. And therefore you've got violence. Why? Because you leave everything to the free market economy. These things about demand and supply. Those things will not solve your problems. And therefore, it's not heretic for the state to have a say in the economy. It does that in the best interest of ordinary people. People who have got no money, people who don't have bank accounts, people who do not have expertise. It is the state that is supposed to safeguard those people. If it doesn't, well, it is what we have. We have got informal settlements, people are living in shacks, people have no sanitation, people can't go to school, people have no jobs, those kind of problems. People go to hospitals, they can't get treated because they don't have money. Well, those problems, it's only the state that can solve those problems. IMF will not, World Bank will not, Washington will not, London will not. But the Kenyan political elite think that those people will solve our problems. And therefore, the US ambassador is this very important person. European, envoys in Nairobi, they said this and that. They said this and that. What does it mean? Come on. Give us a break. What are you saying? So those are the things I think we have to have discussions around those things. But unfortunately, it's the conversation we can't have. When you raise those conversations, people tell you, like Jaramogi, when he was propounding socialist policies, no, he wants us to share wives. You reduce very serious conversations to absurdity. No, these socialist people want us to share wives. And is that what it means? Now, when you do that, people will not have that conversation. They'll think, oh, is that what it means? It doesn't mean that. Even the US, during the COVID, they had this stimulus package. What is that? Those are socialist policies that people have been rendered jobless. The state has to give them money to go and spend and stimulate the economy. You know, people who don't have jobs in some of those Scandinavian countries, the state gives you a stipend every month. What are those? Those are socialist policies. And when you get a job, you're removed from that kind of program. Somebody else comes in. Do we have those things in Nairobi or Nigeria? When you say, these are poor people. No, these are lazy people. Why is the state spending money on this? They're not lazy people. It's only the state that can safeguard the well-being of everybody else. Thank you so much. Keep well.
Fabish,
Yeah, go ahead.
thank you, Fabish. I do not know why I find myself defensive, and I've seen, I think Kumbu Kumbu has dropped out. I would really have wanted her to listen to what I say, but I want to say it nonetheless. The constitution making anywhere in the world, and I want to reiterate this, I said it before, it's a political exercise. It is spearheaded by a certain group. In all cases, politicians are steering the process. Now, in Kenya, I said we suffer from tribalism and we suffer from corruption. When we go to making the constitution, every person is looking at it in terms of how do I benefit myself? Okay, and that's why we surround ourselves among our people. We say our people interests are not represented. But what I wanted to say is, by the time you are coming up with any agreement, by the time you're building the consensus and saying we have ultimately decided this is a document we want to subject to the popular vote, there's a lot of aberration among the people involved. Okay, and we cannot all of us be there. There's got to be a selected few of us who will represent us. And that's why you see in any discussion, whether it's a constitution making, whether it is policy at corporate level, whether it is decision on, say for example, where the on a holiday destination for a family, there is always a discussion at whatever group, and not everybody gets everything that we want, but there's always spirit of give and take. Okay, there is always a process of consultation and consensus. So what I want to say is, by the time we got ourselves to the 2010 constitution, that is the best thing we could have had at that time. And let's not suffer from dementia, neither from myopia. We know where we came from. So when we set out for that, it was the best at that point. And there was a lot of abrasion. There was a lot of fighting in the Kenyan. And so when we got this constitution, we also knew very well. It was not it was not the end of it. It was not conclusive. There's so many bills that had to be deliberated and passed by the parliament. If you look at the draft then it was submitted, so many things were saying the parliament shall deliberate on this. The parliament shall, define this further. And now it is a bit of where now we are implementing the constitution and the parliament is being involved. The parliament has failed to remain above board. It has continuously been compromised by the executive. And so what I say is, it is the progressive mutilation, it is the lack of independence that we thought we wanted to give ourselves by all these arms away from the executive that has continued to ail us from, that we have continued to ail from. I want to say that by the end of the day, what matters is the interest of the individuals. And that's why corruption gets involved. That's why politicians are paid to vote in a certain way in order to change the constitution. If we don't address the question of corruption, bribery in this country. It does not matter whether we have a heaven-given constitution. We shall mutilate it. We shall impartially implement it. We shall do all manner of things, but we shall never achieve what we want. And so what I want to say is, even Kuru Okot has been asked question like, how did you come up with this? And he said, under the circumstances, under that situation, that's the best we could have done. But what we also need to remember is, we never said this is the ultimate document that will never be changed. Constitution making is a progressive thing. We can always come up with changes every day. That the BBI tried the other day, it failed. Somebody will come up with a draft the following day, it will fail, another one will pass, and it will continue to be the same. We don't have a Constitution 2010 and say that is the only document we'll have till wherever time, Kenya ends or whatever happens to it. So I just want to say, I don't want to be defensive. I just want us to understand how consensus is built among groups, and I've given the list as a family, how you come up with fight, how you come up with the agreement. We all need to understand that unless we are honest among ourselves, because what we lack is the honesty. We are not honest. People have ulterior motives. People have personal interests they want to pursue. They always want to sneak something. Okay, and by the time the other person realizes, the other person is ahead of them, is exploiting every person. I've said corruption, the tragedy of the commons. These are some of the things we really suffer from. Thank you.
Fabish, unless you want to give someone else the mic, I just wanted to respond.
Uh,
The first,
yes, okay, go ahead. I wanted to give, but I think he just dropped. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The first problem with, and I'll be direct, let me not be passive aggressive. GDES, the statement is you start by saying everywhere else in the world they do this. Everywhere else in the world they do this. That's the problem. You start from the perspective of everywhere else in the world instead of the perspective of the needs within your community. In the United States, they don't have some of the problems we have. So why would you follow what the United States does? In the Netherlands, they don't have the problems we have, some of the problems we have. Why would you follow their way? In the UK, they don't have some of the problems we have. Why would you follow their way? In those areas, they have winter. We don't have winter. Why would you follow their way? Who cares what their way is? And that's the beginning of the problem, that you look outside because you're elites, and that's where you seek solutions instead of seeing yourselves as the sources of the solution. The other thing, too, about elitism is that it makes you think, as the Monanchi, that something is so complicated that you cannot be a part of. Oh, only we can take care of it. This is a very complicated process. You don't know how complicated it is. We'll take care of it. The Constitution is not a political process. The Constitution is a political, economic, health, education, everything that has to do with human existence. It is literally just an agreement between human beings on how they are going to live with each other. Simple as that. That's what a constitution is. In the United States, because we like to use the United States since that is where our eyes are gazing to the white man, some of them were not even educated. They were all self-taught. They were literally the trash of the UK who ran away because they were tired of being subjugated and went to the United States. Right? And when they get there, they sit down. At that time, they're very heavily misogynistic and patriarchal, and it's men only, right? So they sit down and they say, let's talk for a few months about how we are going to run this government, how we are going to govern. That is literally what a constitution is. And then they write it down. And then once they write it down, they put measures to stop anything from keeping whatever they agree on from getting in the way. So my question is, if it's such a good and it is the best thing you could do, Kenya is a country that has had the problem of corruption. And by the way, to the people who are listening, when you hear someone come in and say corruption and tribalism are the biggest problems in Kenya, they are touting an imperialist narrative. That is an imperialist narrative. Because the biggest problem in Kenya and in Africa is imperialism. It's as simple as that. That is the biggest thing, that these nations are not sovereign. Simple as it is. The person who enables corruption is the imperialist who's paying people behind closed doors and enabling them to do what they do. It is the CIA that is walking around giving people money to beat people up, to abduct them, to kill them. That is who the problem is, not corruption. Corruption is a symptom. Tribalism is a symptom. And in fact, tribalism is their tool that they use against us. We are very, listen, we have intermarried and associated with each other for years. It is the white man and imperialism that comes in and disrupts that and pushes propaganda that says we are different. So to all my brothers and sisters, I'm not saying I'm the answer to everything, and I am so grateful for Western for coming in today. Asante sana, Mwalimu Western. I am so grateful for you. To all of you, you can all create the Constitution. And in fact, in this day and age of technology, there should be a voting mechanism. The people who are chosen to go and sit, and they should be African grounded people. So no suit people, no penguin suit people. Those of you who get offended by me saying penguin suit, get over it and go buy yourself a dashiki or an African suit and stop making things about and make sure that you push also for that suit, the fabric, to be manufactured in Kenya. So all of us should be involved moving forward in the construction of the Constitution. All of us. And they should send, just like they send other things through your phone that you can vote for, it should be sent to everyone who has a phone. That's Safaricom. Instead of giving people's location, they should be sending a question, a list of questions, essentially the items of the Constitution. And honestly, if Christianity can be guided by 10 commandments, why do we need 1,000 things on a Constitution to tell us how we need to live with each other? Thank you, Fabish.
Let me respond really quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to say this. Sometimes we talk about Kenya and we want to compare with the US. We want to compare with the UK. Let's sit down sometimes and ask ourselves, what are we comparing ourselves with? Because I think we are comparing apples and oranges. That's what I want to say. Number two, when we say about the Constitution and how it has failed us and how it has been borrowed and how we did not give ourselves, it is not what we wanted. I want us to be specific about the Constitution. I want to ask Kumbu Kumbu right now, specific question. We created commissions within the Constitution. I give you an example of the Salary and Remuneration Commission. Tell me why the Salary and Remuneration Commission has not been able to date to set the salaries for the members of parliament. Tell me the reason. Tell me the reason. Why does the parliament set the packages and salaries for itself?
I think that's a question for you because you were part of writing the Constitution. Why didn't you put a measure to make sure that what was in it was able to be enforced? It's your question. You're the people. You're literally describing the flaw in what you wrote. If you know that there's been a history of corruption, why didn't you write in the Constitution how we are going to hold Ruto accountable? Why do we have a position where Kenyans don't know how they're going to hold him accountable? And the only thing you put there is that we have sovereignty, and then you come around and take away the sovereignty. Why do you do that if it was such a perfect Constitution?
Yeah, and Kumbukeni, allow me also to add something. It is good that Jides bana, you have been the person I've been looking for. Hao watu ambao ndio sababu wanamtafuta kivuta kibwana huko uashikiki vizuri. Thank you so much for having this time with us. Wewe ndio ule mtu tumekuwa tukikutafuta for very long time. You see now the question that the reason why I thank God that even this topic came today. Mungu ndiye amekuleta. You see, the spirit of God is hovering around and communicating to this country. Hata tukiongea mambo ya revolution. You see, umetoka tu, umekuja kweli hapa kuzungumza na sisi na asante sana. Kwanza, the reason why tunasema kwamba this constitution is not ours is because if nyinyi mulikaa kweli na mulikuwa mnaandika constitution mukijua mnaandika ya Kenya, kwanza constitution yenyewe huwa inaanza kujua watu wa Kenya wana BF namna gani. Okay? You know that you can have a very good, let's say, article. Okay? But then again, you have to know, based on our behavior, this article might be abused in this way. So when it is abused in this way, this is how we are going to tackle it. I give you a good example. Recently, something happens. The IG of police was inducted by the court. Amepatiwa court order, amekosa kurespond, and he was sentenced. Okay? He was sentenced. Now, when he was sentenced, the judge don't know who is going to enforce that law, who is going to arrest the IG of police na kumpeleka committee. And that is why they have to do some kind of drama. Kwamba, but still, tumekufunga lakini, unaweza kupitia hapa kotini, alafu ukatuelezea kwa nini tusikufunge. Something that you know you can never apply uniformly to any other. I would want to know one day kwamba Fabish ameambiwa kwamba tumekufunga mwaka moja, lakini unaweza kurudi hapa baadaye kotini tukakunywa chai na ukakutuambia kwa nini tusikufunge na tukakuachilia. No, so that means there was a gap there. Recently also there was a lawyer here and I was asking questions. One of the questions I was raising was, now, in a scenario like what was happening between when deputy president position was quote unquote vacant. So in the event that something happened to the president and then the office of the president is vacant, and by law, okay, wanasema the deputy president, okay, now we don't have deputy president. Okay, then constitution ikasema we will go to the other arm of government, which the closest one will be parliament. Okay, Wetangula. And then Wetangula atachukua 90 days. Then akichukua 90 days, then 20 election. Now, in our case, kulikuwa kuna IBC. And even if you are to form IBC, the president has to assent to that IBC, ndio sasa ikue a fully functional commission. So now, if something could have happened, Wetangula, yes, imechukua 90 days. We don't have IBC. Wetangula, for that 90 days, you don't have those powers that you can constitute IBC. Na kufanya ikue. So you see, that's what I'm saying. A lot of things were copy-pasted in this constitution. Now, I would want even to know, ni nini kwanza ilikuwa kwa akili yenu, ikiwa mnasema, hata kama watu kweli hawezi kaa chini wakaelewana. Lakini hata nyinyi kweli mkikaa, population ya 40 million people, mnatugawanya into 47 different, alafu mnatengeneza tukuwe na 47 governors. Wakati United States, a whole continent, iko na I think only 51 governors. Nyinyi mnaweka 47. Kusema kweli, nini mlikuwa mnafikiria? And
okay.
yeah.
Okay, you've asked so many questions, and I just want to say one thing. First of all, I don't know where I'm coming from as a person who wrote the Constitution, because
you are part of the people that gave suggestion.
I've borne that accusation, but I want to say this. I don't want to be defensive. Okay, I said I was very young, but I know my very first voting I did was in 2010, because I just attained the age of 18, and I was also knowledgeable. I had read and I knew what we wanted. I just want you to visit the history. Look at how it was voted, the support. Okay, so in terms of popularity, whether it was popular enough or whether it was forced through the throats of the Kenyans, that's what I want to ask. I've asked very specific questions, and I see we are aggressive, we are combative, we are injured, we are ailing, we are bleeding, and that is not how you approach any discussion, any consensus. You've got to take, you've got to be stable. You've got to be stable in your reasoning. You've got to be stable in your emotions. And it cannot be emotional every time. What I want to tell yourselves, without even going back to the Constitution and everything, what brought us here as a revolution? It is because we are against William Ruto and his regime. It is because we want William Ruto to go. Have we even agreed on how we want to remove Ruto? I asked a question the other day. If elections are called today, who will win elections? Ruto will certainly be on the ballot. Who else is on the ballot? Who will we vote for? So it's is because we've not even been able to discuss among ourselves whether we want to be structured or whether we want to be structureless. We cannot be able to agree. And when I said everywhere discussions and consensus are built like this, I did not mean everywhere in the world. I gave examples of every setting. I gave you even the setting of your own family. In holidays in December, I know if you're a blotted family of about 5 people, people say we want to go to Diani, other people want to go to Dubai, and ultimately you'll not hop from Dubai to Diani to Zanzibar to fulfill the interests of every person. You've got to go to one person, to go to one place. The reason you go to one place is because you will, of course, make one party or the other party agree to at least one destination. And that's how consensus are built all over. I don't mean all over in the world. I don't mean that's how the US did. I don't know how the US did. I don't talk about the US economy with Kenya economy in the same breath because I'm being stupid to compare Kenya and the US. These are countries that are about 1,000 years apart. They cannot catch up.
Fabish, uko ama ni mimi nimepoteza sauti?
I think you can give to somebody else.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Gides. What I was
And
saying is,
a correction, Fabish, by the way, Kenya and the US are not 1,000 years apart.
no, it's okay, wherever, even if it is 10, but we have find our, so that's not a problem. We are, there are 200 years or 250 years or 220 years, it's okay. The bottom line is that we cannot compare ourselves with them. They are more matured, quote unquote, or they think that they are matured because they manage to suppress other countries and take their resources, and so, but anyway, our topic of today is first, we have to change the regime. All these topics until the constitution came in, it is about, because we are trying to dig where is the problem of our country, where is the problem coming from. And yes, we find out that most of the problems are coming from the foreign influence, the dependency, and of course the infiltration, including the US. And yes, because as they say that our constitution is a life spirit, is a living spirit. So yes, we imported that living and evil spirit and put in our constitution, and that is why always we are having this problem. So we're saying, as we are draining the swamp, that first we have to, in our revolution, remove all the system, take the country back to reset, factory reset, and then now we make our new foundation. We make a constitution that is meant for Africans, that favors Africans, that resonate with Africans, that is have the spirit of Ubuntu in it. And that is where at least we root things like capitalism or capitalistic ideologies, because that was not in the spirit of Ubuntu. The Constitution of Africa should not have anything about capitalistic ideology, because capitalistic ideology is alien to us. It was not part of Ubuntu. So yes, we have only one way, because we have to remove this regime through revolution, because the Constitution has failed us, or the actors in that Constitution, they have failed us. Yes, Gides, I see your hand.
Yes. Thank you, Fabish. I just want to remind ourselves, and I said, let's not suffer from dementia. We don't want to be myopic, and we know how, as a country, we've walked to where we are today. I am one of the persons who has been aggressive, who has been vocal and unequivocal that William Ruto regime is not the best for Kenya. I have spoken about this. I've spoken against William Ruto right from his candidature to where we are today. to see Kenyans realize that William Ruto is not the best candidate. I am shocked because some of us are not consternated at all. This has been perpetual way of how his character has been. He's not any different from what he was when he joined the Y2K in 1990, when he was used by Moi, when they were together with Raila Odinga for the Pentagon and everything. But what I want to say is, let's look back. The 2010 Constitution that we got ourselves. When did we get this Constitution? And what are the other events that we got before? Now, I said about corruption and I said about tribalism. Somebody said this is a creation, is a symptom, is not a reality. It's not a reality. I just want to say briefly this. In 2002, when Kibaki became the president because he was supported by everybody.
Ngoja kidogo Jides.
Yes.
Because kidogo pole, just mute your mic kwanza. Unajua saa zingine I think the 2002 you read in the books because umesema 2010 you are 18, right?
Of course.
So 2002 you read in the books.
What do you mean I read in the books?
How old were you in 2002?
Well, it is neither here nor there. What I want to say is, our discussion based by our age.
Ngoja. Jides.
What you could tell me, Fabish, is you are wrong. You are wrong when you say you are wrong when you talk about.
Just pull down. We are having conversation. Usijali. You have your time. Unajua? I'm not saying that you are wrong, kutuambia, about 2002, but what I wanted to just only to bring you did very well, kutuambia about your brief history. You voted the first time in 2010, but we all agree. Some of us here maybe we senior you. 2002, we know we were old enough to know what happens. Of course, Kenyans, we voted with emotions because we just wanted to compete with Moi's choice, that was Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is why we went, and that is why all the opposition parties were fought together and they ran behind Kijana Wamalwa and Mwai Kibaki. So yes, lakini ilikuwa sababu KANU regime ilikuwa imefika its expiry date. Then that is why you could see that unity. And remember, it was still in the old constitution. So it was not that the new constitution ndio ilituondolea the rogue regime, like the Nyayo era. We removed Nyayo era with the same old constitution. He just only say it was unity of purpose, and because also that old regime, he had lived its own purpose. So
I get that, Rabish. Maybe the question should have been, why did I mention 2022? 2002 should have allowed me to say why I'm referring to that in the breadth of the previous context that I had laid down. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So what I said is, we know how the 2002 the Kibaki government was formed. When these people sat down, the Raila Odinga, the Kaluki Ngilu, the Wamalwa, there are so many things they agreed on. But everything they agreed on was based on gentleman agreement. There was no time to write down any concrete agreement or to have it, anchored anywhere on a constitution. All the terms of references, they were based on
Jides. Just hold there. That's why nakwambia kuwa I think you are young enough you are young not to understand these things. This was a coalition people formed coalition, ilikuwa inaitwa Rainbow Coalition. And before you form a coalition, you cannot just go into coalition na useme kwamba ni gentleman agreement. Gentleman agreement ni kama ilikuwa kina Rigathi na Naruto. Lakini that
What
one...
what I mean by gentleman
Wait.
nothing was legally binding.
No, wait.
Okay.
Just mute your mic first. I think so that we are not conflicted on where we are, sababu nataka kutuletea history ambao wengine tulikuwekwa wakati hiyo na tunajua, so hatuwezi kupingana kwa vitu ambao some of us we were old enough to witness. Let's just a bit concentrate on the topic of today, and tuache I think at some point tulienda tukapotezwa, tukafika America, tukafika constitution, tukafika wapi huko, lakini vitu kama za 2002 ni watu wengi hapa, Mwalimu Western I think hata alikuwa anafanya kazi akina Sankale. Ngoja tusikie kwanza Sankale. Welcome Sankale.
No, Fabish, just allow me 1 minute, just one thing. When these people sat down and said Kibaki will be the president, Kibaki was supposed to be a one-term president, true or not? True or not, Fabish?
I cannot say that because I'm hearing for the first time from you.
Yes, it was supposed to be a one-term presidency so that he allows other people to take. But what I wanted to say is the monster of tribalism expressed itself best at that point, and that's why in 2005 they could not have come up with a good, agreeable constitution between themselves, okay? And that's why even when they went to so when we went to the elections in 2007, it was against the backdrop of the disagreement in 2005. When we went to the constitution in 2010, we were already ailing from 2007, 2008 post-election violence. Let's not bury ourselves in the sand. Let's not sow the events that came before the 2010 agreement and all those kind of things. So let's not bury ourselves in the sand. That's what I wanted to say.
I think Jides, you just need to sometimes unasikia na wale watu ambao wamekula chumvi kidogo kupita, because vile unatuambia 2005 we know what happened. You cannot say that it was a disagreement of such, because when government is pushing its own agenda to one direction, and government always they will want to, even this we had 3 constitution. Nimesikia ukitaja mbili, ukitaja wako draft na Bomas draft, na ulisahau hata kwamba kulikuwa na ingine ilikuwa inaitwa Kilifi draft, na hiyo Kilifi draft ndio kina Ruto walikuwa wanafukuzana nayo huko, wakaenda hoteli nyingine ilikuwa iko pale Kikambala. But anyway, utapata kwa vitabu za historia. Wacha kwanza tusikie Sankale.
Hey, Fabish. Hello guys, mnanisikia?
Yes, loud and clear. Karibu ndugu.
Asante sana. Leo huku kumewaka moto, lakini ni mzuri. Moto ikiwaka ni kumaanisha an iron is sharpening an iron. So I think Fabish, hata sitaki umute mic yako. Na I think Fabish, ningependa sana we discuss about our history, because nikiangalia vizuri sana whatever we are fighting hapa, it's history. You are right, he's right, but we are all confused. Kuna some part ako right, there is a part of you ko right, but there is somewhere history yetu is decorated. Will you allow me to kuielezea briefly, ama we do it another day?
In as much as yes, it's an interesting topic, but we need to choose a day that we talk of history, and of course I think it is better kwanza we sort our current situation, then tutakuja kurevisit history, because tumeongelea Sankale, tumekuwa nawe kwa spaces nyingi tukiongea constitution chapter this chapter that, tumeongea kuhusu history, tumeongea kuhusu nini. So I think it is wise for us now, let's sort our current problem kwanza, strategize on that, mobilize on this, then baadaye Yes, of course, history yetu inafaa kuja kuandikwa vizuri. It pains me hata nikiangalia vile history inakuwa mutilated. Kama nikisikia saizi ikisemekana Kindiki ati ni the third deputy president, you know, it's like yani history yetu tunaanza ati tumekata from somewhere tunakuja hivi, you know. I think of which I think it is very wrong. History inafaa ikue vile iko. So history tutakuja kuongea, lakini jaribu kuchangia tu yale mambo ambayo tunapitia sasa.
It's okay. How I wish hiyo time tutaongea about our history, that guy mwenye kulikuwa mna argue na yeye hapo akuwe, cause guys I've written a book, ni vile sijai publish about our history of Kenya from 17th centuries to 18th centuries to 19th century to 2002 our time, so it's very interesting. Hiyo time naweza penda
Nikuulize kitu kidogo tu about the books hiyo from 17th century, where did you get your fact and research? Ni huku ambao iliandikwa
one, what made me to do my research, I read the books and then I start correcting what they had written on those books, because there's a lot of things that don't make sense for your history. So upon and
yeah,
then
so what I'm saying is, how are you correcting from your own point of view, from your own sense?
From my own point of view.
Okay,
and then what made me to correct my own point of view ni I read the Bible, nikasoma the book of Matthew na nikasoma the book of Luke. And
then ukachanganya Bible okay, sawa.
So nikaangalia genealogy ya Jesus.
So ukachanganya Bible na sasa ukachanganya Bible, ukasema Bible alisemaga Moses aliendaga akachoma msitu akavua viatu, Moses akabadilisha nyekundu ikakuwa nyoka, then tuko na safari ndefu ya history yetu ya Afrika. Anyway, ngoja tusiende huko manake kutawaka moto. History yetu tunahitaji kutafuta kwa namna ya kivyake, tufanye research ile ambayo inatakikana, sababu Biblia na history ambayo ya Wikipedia bado zinaendanisha tu sawa. I think ndio tuje tutafute ukweli wetu, inahitaji kazi nyingi sana for real.
Fabish, I wish one day ukileta hiyo topic ya history tukidiscuss sisi wote, I'm sure all of us, hata kila mtu atakaa na sense yake, na the history ndio inatuingiza kwa hizi shida zote tuko nazo za Adani, za vitu kama Safaricom wanatu track, like every problem that you are facing today, William Ruto is part of that history, enye hata akiwa mtoto kabla hajazaliwa yeye ni one of the ameingia kwa hiyo system.
Sakale, ngoja kidogo ndio tuende kwa lazi. Katika hiyo history umesema kuna mali ambao ukisoma kwa Biblia unaona imedescribe William Ruto.
No, ni vile hujataka ni explain.
Like unajua where problem. Ngoja kidogo tu let's be guided. Ndio sababu nikasema we need to have something that is called very critical thinking and thinking line. You know, let me put this clear. Ndio sababu nasema it is good to kwanza to concentrate on our current history yetu. Si kitu ya kufanyia nayo mchezo. Huwezi kuniambia ati kwamba ati nitaenda kusoma vitabu zile ambazo history ambayo imeandikwa na hawa, halafu niseme ati nimeandika tena kitabu yangu ya historia. Nitakuwa bado sijafanya kitu. Kuna mambo mengi. Ngoja utaongea tu. Just like how the Bible, I'm sorry, Christians here, don't be offended. This is my own opinion and I'm not pushing to anyone's throat. I've been raised in a very stoned Christian foundation. Hata nilisomea Christian missionary school toka nikiwa primary mpaka some level. And when I started having that critical thinking and I begin to see things in a very logical sense, I found out that a lot of things are not making sense. So The reason why we are suffering, it is part of that ideology that we are. Unajua, ukitaka kwanza kufanya mtu mtumwa wako, you have to make that person dependency 100%. Ajue kwamba ndiye akule ni wewe, ndiye avae ni wewe, na ajue kwamba kila ambao unaamini ndio anafaa kuamini. When someone's have their own principles, you cannot colonize that person. Now what you need to do is change the faith, change the belief, change the principles. Hizo ndio inaitwaga indoctrination kama ujui. So when they wanted to colonize us, they first had to indoctrinate us. So indoctrination, it comes from different avenues, including our faith, our belief. And that is why anything ambao sisi tunaamini inaitwa ni black magic. Ukienda mlimani vile ambao mlikuwa mnaenda kuomba, leo hii unaambiwa kwamba wewe umeenda kushiriki nguvu za giza, umeenda kwa uchawi. But ukienda Catholic, when they are doing their rituals, wakichoma zile nini wanachoma, zile marashi na wakizungusha hivi. No, hiyo inaitwa it is a holy mass. Lakini wewe ukienda leo kwa babu yangu aenda achome zake na kuanza kufukiza na kuanza kufanya ritual yake. Yeye anafanya mazingaombwe. That is how we were indoctrinated. Yani kuonyeshwa kwamba our own is evil. And that is why mpaka leo sisi Waafrika wenyewe tunajichukia, tunakuwa na self-hatred. Alafu sasa ndio tukakuja tukawekwa capitalistic mind. Capitalistic in a way kwamba hata leo unaweza kuua ndugu yako sababu ya mali. Because that capitalistic ideology imetuingia. Ndugu yako leo akishika kitu yako, you want to kill that person. Mtu ambao mlizaliwa kwa tumbo moja. Lakini ukishakuwa mkubwa, utaishi kwa nyumba ya 5 bedroom, ndugu yako ataishi Kibera, ambao ukiona anaishi kuteseka, but hata uwezi kumweka kwa nyumba yako mkakaa pamoja kwa amani because of that capitalistic ideology kwamba changu ni changu na lazima nitakufa nacho. Kwamba utakuwa na mamilioni ya pesa na ndugu yako, mtoto wako atateseka, hata hizi kusoma ama ni mgonjwa, lazima raitisha mchango kwa marafiki, lakini you can afford but you cannot do it because chako ni chako. That is the capitalistic ideology indoctrination ile ambayo tuliwekewa. So these things tukizungumza, it needs a very critical thinking line. Lakini ndio nikasema kwa sasa let's first deal na ile kitu ambayo iko inatuhuma kwa sasa. Wacha kwanza tutibu hii kidonda. Kula ambao tunaenda mbele, after we have drained the swamp, hizi zingine sasa tutaenda tukirectify pamoja, because we thank God now we have a society that is enlightened and can be able to see things in a wider lens. So let's continue first discussing strategizing about 1111. Maanake tukiongea hizi issues tutakuwa tunaongea tu kila siku mpaka tunachoka kama vile tumekuwa tukifanya hizo. So please, let's not divert anymore. The last scene, wacha tuongee mambo ya 1111 alafu tukuje kwa Chabonji.
Yeah, before nifike hapo.
Sasa ndio ukuje utuambie solution ya current. Yes, the last scene.
Before tufike hapo, nitawaambia actually the Bible came with a gun. So anything wataka kuniambia about Christianity I can't follow. I believe in God but I don't believe in the Bible. Because Bible ndo inatuambia like I know umetuambia you talk about 11:11 but I want to sparkle a little bit to the brother mwenye alikuwa anaongea.
Hapana. The last scene 22:11. Tuangaje tu tutoka hapo please.
Yeah, but the Bible came with a gun. So 11:11 biki tunatuambia tu my guys manze itabidi tu tutoke. Hakuna otherwise because if right now unaweza check the US wamedemand wanataka another air base, wanataka another military base in Kenya, and whereas ile ingine they are raping our sisters. But kuna hizo cases mingi sana and then check. Unaona? So I don't know hata sijui mbona like we are even discussing this thing. Tunafaa manze tu I don't even know what to say, but me what I want is a successful protest. Unacheki, like we need to fight. As I was saying, number one, lazima boycott Safaricom. You know what to do. Naona? But 11-11, my guys, acha tu tukue manze, we are our parents' hope. Manze, we need to fight. We need to fight. Hakuna otherwise. Na wasenye wanatuambia sijui tuende kotini ni fit where go keep the record. But all in all, we really need to fight. Na this time tukitokea like aturudi home. Na ukifungua shop the next day the protest itakuwa successful, we jua tutakuwa tunakula kwako because it means unatufungulia. Hatuwezi kuwa si tunatokea protest wana unakuja unafungua duka unatusoma ufala. Haita happen hivyo. I know most of you wataanza kusema sijui this guy is doing what and what, but that's on you. But this time we are supposed to be serious. Now we are supposed to be taken serious tukitokea. As I said lastly, we won when no one believed in us. Now everyone anatuambia tokeeni. And I'm 100% sure like tukitokea kwa street, actually they will support us. No. But we ukitokea just know aturudi nyuma. We are not going back in our homes because you don't even have that home. Unasema unarudi nyumbani wapi? They are coming for it. Unasema like ati unaogopa bullet, whereas our president ama ndo Ruto mlisema asiitwe president slow poison pole, anakuja analeta hii na hii, analeta hii na hii, na ukiona zote zinatupeleka tu grave manze. It is high time now like we stand up like men manze. Acha tuache like we really need to fight. And actually I'll give you like a little story. Nishaipeana tena huku. The owner of Dubai anaitangwa sijui ni Mohammed something, alisemanga my great grandfather used to ride a camel. His father like sijui ni his father's father alikuwa ana ride camel, and then babake akaride camel, yeye akaride Range Rover, his son ataride Audi, his sons ataride the new version of car. Lakini in the next one generation, his generation itarudi back to camels because actually tough decision wanga zinabuildiwa by men. Unaona? Lakini easy week, that's unapata kuna wase wengine sasa waoga sana because actually they are so comfortable. Unaona? But sai ndo tunafaa kuwa tough manze. Alafu na kwa huo mse alisemanga sijui after tume outthrow this regime, who will be the president? Hiyo ni hesabu ufai kuwa unafanya. The first thing tunafaa outthrow. Even we don't want to throw this government, we want to outhaul it. Tunataka yote iende. We are not here to outthrow Ruto. No, we want to outhaul. Tunataka kuioverhaul yote. Tunataka turn around. Acha ikae venye itakaa. Unacheki? So people stop saying ati sijui who will be next, we don't care. Hata ya akiuza ama akikataa ku bring good services in our country, I give a fuck. So why do we have to give a fuck? Unaona? So we really need to fight bana. Achani hii ujinga yani. Hii ujinga sijui constitution. Hizo ni vitu yani saa hii we are not supposed to be thinking of. Because we are the one who are suffering. And as I asked last time, why are the foreigners so comfortable living in our country, whereas we personally, we are crying? Na hiyo swali nikiuliza wasee, now and then, Wangu unapata na kuna watu wana agree na mimi na wengine wa agree, but all in all they are so comfortable, and that's why sisi hatuko comfortable in our own country. Unacheki, lakini after 11/11 kuna strategy ni mingi sana. I even talked about if we occupy all Kenya prisons manze, like unajua tutakuwa lockdown by other countries, hakuna wenye wanataka, like kutakuwa tu na lockdown. Na nikauliza a very simple question, if one inmate akipotea wanga anaekelewa bounty, what about wafunguliwa wote? The government itapata kazi ya kufanya. They are killing us because they have nothing to do. So like where tutaenda to boycott, and that's why nasema like hata tukiboycott we need to leave a mark. Unaona, these protests tunafaa tuambie kila mtu, hatutaki kuona gari Nairobi, hatutaki kuona gari like Kisumu, hatutaki kuona gari in any county, mtu apeleke gari yake nyumbani. Unaona, na tukipatana nazo we will light them. Au tutakia bikuzu manze, mnajifanya like mko huko, mko protected. The government don't protect you, anga ina protect the foreigners. It doesn't protect us. That's why unapatanga kasa hii like kuna udem flani like everyone is talking about mwenye alikuwa abducted. Like mbona yani hizi vitu zote ni sisi wanga zinarudia? Why? Unacheki? So whereas you think manze, we ukikaa chini just think mbona hao foreigners hakuna mwenye analia? Na nikasema na with a certain video ile time tulikuwa tuna occupy Uhuru Park, nikauliza kuna huo mzungu fulani alikuwa anasema why are you tear gassing me, whereas Ali yule boys fulani wa kina Boniface Mwangi alikuwa anaharasiwa, na anawauliza si we talked about this, it was supposed to be a peaceful protest. So kuna vitu mingi sana, lakini shida yetu ni tuna focus na the wrong things. We always focus, we are supposed, na that's why nakwambia hata the time tuliingianga parliament ulisikianga ni Msari alisema walikuanga na inaitangwa aje, like walikuanga na insurance. Sasa tuone kama wako na insurance ya prisoners, because actually they are fucking us. And don't forget still the president called us like criminals on a national TV. Alituitanga criminals, na kitu tulitokea tu na nini, na frag and a blow throw of water. So vitu zingine lazima tuna risk, and that's unaonanga like nitaishi kusema like big risk wanga zinakupea big outcomes. So ukiendelea kurisk unatokea kwa barabara, like unatokea kudu nini? Hakuna, like ataka tunatokea, we are supposed to have something even bigger. The government ina to pray card, and that's why I said manze, if you want to win the government ulazima we hard the same thing tulifanyanga, unaona. So as long as unatokea upige kelele manze, ai no bana, tunafaa tutokee tuache mark. We were here and we did it. Lakini ati kusema ati tutokee sijui tufanye nini, hiyo itamake manze. Kama ni kuboycott, kama ni kuoccupy Safaricom, imeua watu wengi sana bana. It have killed a lot of people. Unaona, so kuniambia sijui ati ukiboycott ati ya kutaki hivyo a coward, kaa nyumbani. Unacheki hawa si wa Subaru tunajua kwao. Very soon I'm very convinced hii movement ikiendelea they are the one who will give us the guns. Juu lazima tutaenda kosi, tulipewa location. Sometimes hatutaishi hivi, hatutabeg. Nimekuambia in one way or the other, either ni bullet itakuchukua ama hizi vitu the government inapitisha zitawachukua. Naona, so that's why nimesema like men ndo wanga wana build tu, and we just stop talking. That's when unaona siku hizi hadi kwa space I don't feel like talking because actually I'm tired. Naona, me personally I'm tired. But everyone who I come across with, when you have a conversation, I have to talk about the government, and he is like, manze, we are waiting for you. Unauliza mtu sijui what, anasema like we are waiting for a movement. Who will start? Let's be the one who started. We are giving them hope. Hadi wanakuja huku, unacheki, and they know when you come here we are talking about things that will help our country. No, like No, lakini manzetu
Sankale,
kula.
can I ask you a question?
Who, me?
Go on.
Jeff, kindly be orderly, eh? Kindly be orderly. Mute your mic.
Okay.
Yeah, just you will be given permission. Yeah, thank you. Jpondi.
Fabish vipi?
Yes, karibu sana.
Jeff alikuwa anataka kuongea. Jeff, you can go on.
No.
Just give me a minute.
Okay, I think Jeffy.
Nipatie 1
I
minute.
don't know
I
why.
just want to do something.
I don't want the questions and answers. What we just need is only answers.
Solutions, right?
Yeah, solutions.
So Jeff, do you want to say something, or I just take over? Just let me know. Jeffy.
No, I actually wanted to ask the last guy who submitted, why is it that we were called anarchists?
No, that's why I'm telling you, Jeffy, this is not the right time to ask or, let's go to the answers. If you want to build, kama unataka kujenga hoja yako from that anarchist, unaweza kujenga without, using reverse psychology on someone that make his own statement. And they will not be progressing, Of course, you have a point. That is why we are called the anarchist and ume understand. So anasema kwamba ikiwa tumeitwa anarchist, we should embrace the title. I don't know what is it about that is triggering you about that. Or what is that you don't understand? You don't need, just we jenga hoja yako, give a solution. But Jaipondi, go ahead as Jeff is composing himself.
Okay, thank you, Fabish. Fabish, I went to the space of the state of the nation as I promised you. I got the speaker briefly, and I was able to articulate this issue of Revolution Viva for 11/11, to boycott Safaricom and no Adani deal. They were very high-age speakers, these big wigs, and I'm glad that Midge gave me the auditorium. So, just to say, the recording is there, and I hope most of you can just go and listen to it. And I'm quite, I can say I'm just 50-50, because in that space again, there were like caliber of people who were like. Uh, had agony, they were ranting, there were a lot of rants as expected, of course, and there were some solutions, and then the closing remarks by Dr. Miguna, and then we have Professor Kivutha Kibwana and the rest. So there are some things that the doctor said. I don't want to talk about it here, but if you have some time, just go and it's recorded. You can just go when you have time. Just play the recording, and at least it will give you some insights. So we don't repeat a lot of things. I'll just talk about the main things that we share. As at the close of that space, Miguna said a lot of things that I concur with, and a lot of things, Fabish, that you've been saying here. And one of them was like, we need to get out of politics, because it's not working. We need to go revolutionary way, And even he proposed to set up like a closed door meeting, private meeting with a few individuals, then forge the way forward. He was even he spoke about something about revolution, like we've been talking about here, revolution that has happened before. And actually, there's some interesting thing that I had missed. There's a point, Fabish, that I've been talking about here, but I had missed to always push it forward more.